After Sir Alex Ferguson's departure in 2013, Man United has not been a real threat to win the Premier League and has not progressed past the Champions League quarter-finals since they lost 3-1 to Barcelona in the 2011 final. A rotating door of managers, formation changes, ownership's poor relationship with the fans, and terrible transfer windows have set the club back a bit, but with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in charge and a shift in transfer policy, United are turning back in the right direction and should be able to compete for the top prizes again soon. A big part to their acceleration back into Europe's elite, however, will be dependent on them qualifying for next season's Champions League, which might come down to the last game of the season against Leicester. When David Moyes was sacked in April 2014, Louis van Gaal took over that May, and after he finished with Holland in the World Cup, Van Gaal claimed he was inheriting a broken United squad, which featured aging veterans, not enough high-end youth talent, and a late Ferguson loyalty signings that were simply at the club far too long, like Chris Smalling, Ashley Young, Phil Jones, and Antonio Valencia. For players to be at United a decade, you think of the Ferdinands and Giggs and Scholes types, not Smalling, Young, Jones, and Valencia. This is what Van Gaal was alluding to, in addition to the team having no set style of play and very little transfer market activity. United finished 7th the year before he took over, which is their lowest finish in the last 25 years, and after selling Ronaldo, they weren't super active in the transfer market outside of David De Gea and Robin van Persie. But under Van Gaal, United swung too far wildly in the other direction. Consider in his 2 years, the 14-15 and 15-16 seasons, they spent £315 million on transfers, and 152.1 of it on attackers Anthony Martial, Memphis Depay, and Angel Di Maria. While Martial has established himself in the present, £98.1 million went to Depay and Di Maria, and their stats combined were 84 appearances with only 11 goals. In 60 Premier League appearances combined, the duo only had 5 goals. Scott McTominay has 6 goals in 54 league starts for United right now, and he's not an attacker. United sold Depay and Di Maria in the following windows for a net loss of £26 million. And then looking at the midfield, we saw Ander Herrera and Morgan Schneiderlin brought in for about £63.9 million. And while I think Herrera was serviceable for United with a big role in their future Europa League win, they sold Schneiderlin for an £11 million loss the next season because he didn't fit into Mourinho's system and simply wasn't United caliber. Van Gaal's defensive signings were very hard to judge, largely because Luke Shaw, who he signed for £33 million from Southampton, suffered a serious knee injury and hasn't been healthy for consistent stretches until recently. He signed Shaw and right back Matteo Darmian to try to run a 3 at the back with 2 wing-back formation he ran during the World Cup with the Netherlands, but later pivoted to more of a 4-2-3-1. Out of Shaw, Darmian, Rojo, and Blind, the latter 3 who were more depth signings that were asked to play too large of a role, Shaw at least had an argument for being worth his fee, while the others would show glimpses but were overall too inconsistent. Van Gaal lost momentum in his second season and failed to get out of the group stage of the Champions League, and was sacked after winning the FA Cup. One of the problems United has had is the optics about how they've done business. They wasted no time sacking Van Gaal and didn't really allow for the spotlight to be on the players for their FA Cup achievement. And during this time, United tried to sell David De Gea to Madrid, but waited until 11:59 p.m. to send Real their paperwork, and reportedly went ghost for 8 hours in communication. This was the famous fax incident. Van Gaal later criticized the club for being too big for their own good, and the fact that the commercial background of Woodward blending into the football side was bad, as he compared it to how Bayern was run by, quote, football men. He claimed Woodward had zero clue about football, stating how he was initially hired for commercial reasons only, which is what every United fan has been saying for a while now. If there was one positive from Van Gaal's reign, is that Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial were starting to be established into the first team. As Jose Mourinho came in, United had been struggling to score goals, and that would continue throughout his tenure. After scoring only 49 in Van Gaal's last season, they only managed 54 the next season, which was a weird campaign which saw them finishing 6th despite the second fewest goals in the league and having the same number of losses as champion Chelsea. De Gea from 2015 to 2018 kept United in so many games, and potentially from finishing 7th or out of Europe 2 out of the 3 years. 15 draws sunk Mourinho's first season, but they still won the Europa League final and the League Cup. 17-18 is what Jose considered to be his greatest career achievement, getting United to 2nd despite, in his eyes, not having the best squad.
If I tell you, for example, that I consider one of the best jobs of my career to finish 2nd with Manchester United in the Premier League, you say this guy is crazy. He won 25 titles and he's saying that a 2nd position was one of his best achievements in football. I keep saying this because people doesn't know what is going behind the scenes.
Despite this, United fans in the press were lamenting Jose's negative football, but were still dealing with it because it had been their highest league finish in 5 seasons. Jose brought in Zlatan, Lukaku, and Henrik Mkhitaryan, and Zlatan and Lukaku had both very similar goal contributions in their first season, with 28 goals in 46 appearances for Zlatan and 27 and 51 for Lukaku, which is sort of frustrating from United's point of view because one was £76 million more expensive than the other. While Lukaku was by no means bad for United, getting voted into a PFA Team of the Year in his first season, Mourinho's preference for a target man number 9 slowed United's attack and hurt both Martial and Rashford's development. Martial and Rashford were both shoehorned on the left flank and unable to drift centrally and interchange, which is what they were both good at. Martial was covering little ground, which takes away his greatest strength. While Mkhitaryan wasn't spectacular for United, he had 6 goals in 11 games in their Europa League run, and the swap deal for Alexis Sanchez was the beginning of the end for Jose, as Alexis only had 5 goals in 45 United appearances. Mourinho's signings of Lindelof, Eric Bailly, and Nemanja Matic were meant to bring defensive stability, and excluding Matic, who has seen a recent revival under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Bailly has been injured and inconsistent, and Lindelof is only maximized when playing next to a top center half, as he is somewhat weak airily in duels. Jose was frustrated with both, and had a list of central defenders he brought to Woodward before the 18-19 season, and got rejected for all of them. Some of the names include Harry Maguire, Diego Godin, Leonardo Bonucci, and Rafael Varane. His public annoyance with this and his football heritage rant dampened the mood at United, and Ole took over shortly after.
Do you know what this means? 3-0, but also mean 3 premierships, and I won more premierships alone than the other 19 managers together. 3 for me and 2 for them. Respect, man, respect.
After Ole's PSG Champions League miracle, his start to a permanent role at United wasn't smooth, but since the January window he's really had United playing well after being left for dead in the top 4 race. So in the present, where's Ole going to take United? Let's start by looking at what he has done so far, starting with bringing Harry Maguire in. The £78 million fee leads to banter from rival fans, but the market is inflated and this is what centre backs cost now. Maguire has stabilized the back 4 when he's been there, and Aaron Wan-Bissaka for £50 million from Crystal Palace looks to be United's first choice right back for the next decade, and is a strong 1v1 defensive presence. Another creative playmaker was needed, so another $50 million was spent on Sporting Lisbon's Bruno Fernandes in the January window, which looks to be one of United's best signings in the past 10 years. Bruno's presence has allowed for more creative tactical flexibility, as Bruno covers large amounts of ground, is a set-piece specialist, and takes the burden off Pogba to be the lone creative in midfield. It allows Pogba to pick his spots, and we all know he's capable of doing things like this. Bruno is a long shot specialist and can score from 30 yards out, although he needs to take a little bit less of those shots. He's made Rashford, Martial, and Mason Greenwood more prolific, and this will continue into next season. He has 6 goals and 5 assists in just 9 United appearances. Starting Rashford and Martial together has allowed both of them to thrive, because they can interchange positions. Both Rashford and Martial don't mind dropping deep to receive the ball, and Martial often goes out wide to receive and then begin the attack. Rashford is most dangerous when he's allowed space to cut inside on his right foot, and Martial and Rashford 1-2s are something that will only continue to get better over time as they have more game time together. Both have no trouble making runs in behind from either the left or centrally, and without someone like Lukaku in the way, strictly just keeping them on the wing away from threatening positions, we have seen Rashford's production increase significantly under Solskjaer, and Martial's ability to attack space and create is on full display. United is getting back to its roots and letting the youth play and picking their spots to spend big around homegrown talent. Despite Dan James starting most of the year, Mason Greenwood has made it clear that he deserves more opportunities, reminding everyone of a Robin van Persie regen with the ability to finish with both feet, and with great dribbling ability in tight spaces to find angles to shoot. The biggest separator right now for Greenwood compared to guys like Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli is the fact that he can generate power plus placement with both feet. The front 3 of Rashford, Martial, and Greenwood has 55 goals, and they're all in their teens or early 20s, and with Greenwood up to 15 goals at just 18 years old. The trio has outscored Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah, and Roberto Firmino this season, who have just 51. Despite Greenwood's incredible talent, Solskjaer and Woodward need to finalize the Jadon Sancho transfer for 2 reasons. Most of Sancho's assists have come on horizontal and diagonal balls, which helps an area of need for United and threats from the flank into dangerous areas in the box, something that hasn't been there consistently in years. Also, with Wan-Bissaka not fully comfortable springing forward into an attack all the time just yet, having someone who has control of the possession and can attack from the right either by taking defenders one-on-one, which Sancho is elite at, or crossing to teammates, is vital. Sancho has been statistically more dangerous playing on the left this season for Dortmund, and just looks more dangerous on that flank, as he loves to make inverted runs centrally similar to Rashford, so Ole will have to figure out how to get the most out of everyone. Sancho can use his pace to get by slower center backs, but the movement and fluidity between Sancho, Martial, Rashford, and Bruno is key to the modern game, and it's good that Solskjaer is aware of this. Getting game time for Mason Greenwood would be super important, but this attacker's potential to be the best in Europe. Solskjaer has this group on a path to be real contenders for a Premier League title soon, but two things need to be added in addition: extra attacking midfield depth and another center half. Some will point to the left back position, but I think Shaw and Brandon Williams are fine for now, and they need to address center back first. Because Maguire isn't the fastest, I would love to see them find a center back with more pace to pair with him, similar to Joe Gomez's role next to Van Dijk, or what Davinson Sanchez has done for Tottenham. Academy product Tendon Menji looks promising, so maybe he or Monaco 19-year-old Benoit Badiashile could be an answer. Finally, extra midfield depth would be important, either defensively or another attacking mid/winger down the left flank. Jack Grealish fits this role perfectly, as he occupies mainly the same spaces for Aston Villa as Rashford does for United, and I could see him being an impact sub with the ability to start games without much of a worry. The drop off from Bruno to Lingard is just too big right now, and any extended injury to one of their midfielders might cause trouble. Matches has seen a great run in form recently, but it's getting up there in age, so they need to address that too. All in all, after a failed transfer approach of stars at their peak, or stars that were poor fits for their managers, United has reined in spending for attacking players, trusted the youth, has gotten back into the development game, and has used money to fortify the back four. A couple of signings put them right back into title contention, and sticking with Solskjaer, who has beaten Pep 3 times, Lampard 3 times, Nuno and Jose Mourinho this season, could pay huge dividends for United. Ole has found his starting 11, which for United fans is a relief because it's been a while since you could consistently name the best starting 11. Ole's best formation has been a 4-2-3-1 with two holding mids, but has found tactical flexibility in some games switching to a back 3 or a back 5. But to accelerate this process of development, United's goal right now needs to be qualifying for the Champions League next season, but based on what I've seen, and how players like Pogba are starting to buy in again, it won't be too long before Title 21 heads back to Old Trafford.